Chapter 22. Kayla ran, her heartbeat pumping. "There she is," a voice behind her shouted as she raced down to the stream, stumbling and weaving, but determined to reach Mufumbi. She found him crouched at the river's edge, washing some clothes, and he jumped up when she crashed through the trees. "Global cops," she panted, "everywhere!" He grabbed her hand, and together they splashed into the stream. The barking dogs sounded nearer every second, and she followed Mufumbi out of the far side of the stream. "This way," he said. The dogs dragged global officers down to the water where Mufumbi had been washing. "They must have crossed," a man shouted. Mufumbi led her to a tumble-down shed. There was a hatch door in the ground in front of it, and she helped him pull it up by its handle. Kayla climbed down wooden stairs to the bottom, and Mufumbi pulled the cover over the hole before joining her. "It's an abandoned mine shaft," he explained. "I found it one day while I was exploring." Using the cold dirt wall as a guide, he made their way along the dark tunnel. "You should go back," she said. "They're not looking for you." "They might be," he replied. "My parents might have them looking for me. I'm a missing person. They might be taking in everyone who lives in these woods for being uncoded." "But you're not wanted for a crime." He took her hand. "Not having a code is a crime." They followed the tunnel for what seemed like a long time, and when they climbed out at the end, they were still in the forest, but they couldn't hear any dogs barking. "Listen, we've ditched them for now, but they know we're around," Mufumbi said. "We better keep moving." He pulled a piece of rectangular black plastic with a monitor screen from his pocket. "A guy left this GPS in the oasis yesterday. I was planning to give it back to him tonight. I guess it's mine now. It'll tell us exactly where we are and how to get where we're going. It bounces a signal of satellites floating in space. The question now is, where are we going?" "The Adirondack Mountains," Kayla suggested. "I think that's the best place." "Probably," he agreed. He pushed some buttons on the GPS and turned. "It looks like we're going that way." They walked through the woods for the rest of the morning and into the late afternoon. Around 5 o'clock, they came out of the woods to the back of a large grocery warehouse. The back door of a truck was open, and the two of them scrambled into the vehicle. "Soda and potato chips?" Kayla read the label on the boxes stacked in the trucks. "It could be worse. It could have been beets or something." The door behind them slammed shut. Kayla and Mufumbi looked at each other, unsure of what to do. The truck might take them farther north, but what if it's going south? Kayla asked. Mufumbi took his GPS from his pant pocket. "We'll know in a minute." The engine started, and they both stared at the GPS. "North," Mufumbi said, "and right up the Superlink." "Final level," Kayla said, smiling up at him. The truck carried them for miles, and they sat with their backs against the boxes, drank soda and ate chips as they bumped along on the superhighway. She rested her head on his shoulder, and he put his arm around her. "I'm glad I found you," she said. "Me too," he agreed, holding her a little tighter. When the truck finally stopped nearly 2 hours later, they hid behind boxes in the back as the driver carried out the freight from the front. "Stay or go," Mufumbi checked for Kayla's opinion. "Stay," she whispered. "We'll keep checking that thing to make sure we don't veer off course, but this truck could take us miles up the road." They kept low until the truck motor started again. At the next stop, the driver removed 4 boxes, and they realized they were losing more and more of their cover at each stop. "We'd better get out, or he'll see us at the next stop," Kayla said. While the driver was delivering his order, they hurried out of the truck, and they emerged into the dark night to see a neon sign announcing that they were at the Adirondack Motel. "We're here already?" Kayla asked as they ran to the back of the building. Mufumbi checked his GPS. "We're at the bottom of the mountain range. We have to get up or around Keene or Lake Placid. That's where the resistance groups are. They like being near the Canadian border, just in case things get rough." That night, they found a discarded mattress in a dumpster at the back of the motel and dragged it into the nearby trees. "It's cold," Kayla commented. "It's always colder up north," Mufumbi reminded her. "We've come pretty far today." He pulled her close, and his body heat helped take off the chill. Kayla woke in the night shivering. Several feet away, a pool of moonlight broke through the trees. A figure took form in the moonlight. Uotona was there once again, and she raised her arms and seemed to be chanting, although Kayla heard no sound. Then a voice whispered inside of Kayla's mind, "Stay on my wavelength, and I will pull you in." Kayla got up and walked towards the sparkling image, but it faded slowly. By the time she reached the moonlight, there was nothing there. In the morning, she awoke and saw Mufumbi coming across the parking lot and towards the trees, holding a brown paper bag. "Good, you're up. I was just about to wake you." He sat on the mattress beside her. 2 teas and 2 muffins. He lifted the food out of the bag. "Did you steal this?" Kayla asked. "No, I asked for it at the deli down the road. I just thought I'd take a chance, and it worked. The guy gave it to me." Astral, she said. Yeah, he told me a lot of people are down on their luck around here. They've been thrown out of jobs and can't find new ones. He says it's hard times since the barcode became law. Not everyone was as generous as the deli man. As they continued north, they began shoplifting, taking only what they needed to survive on. The idea of stealing bothered both of them, but they could find no other way to stay alive. Kayla was amazed by how expert they had become at sneaking food and drink out of convenience stores. At one truck stop, Mufumbi's photo stared back at him from a billboard. His parents were looking for him and had put up a missing person flyer. You should let them know you're all right, Kayla said to him. I'd like to let my mother know, he admitted, but I can't think of a way to do it. Neither could she. Without access to a computer or a phone, they were completely isolated. Along the way, they read discarded newspapers that they found in garbage cans or dumpsters. Kayla's story had nearly disappeared. Did it mean they weren't looking for her anymore? That seemed too good to really be true, but at least her picture wasn't all over the place. Dave Young's picture was all over the papers, though. After he'd resigned from the Senate in protest over the barcode, he'd set up a Decode headquarters right in Washington. This is still a free country and I have nothing to hide, he told the press. Kayla studied his picture in the paper. A good-looking man in his 30s with dark eyes and tousled brown hair. He had a kind face, she observed to Mufumbi. He's a great guy, Mufumbi said. I'd like to go to Washington and work for Decode. Washington's that way, she said, pointing south. I don't mean right now. I can't go now. Why not? Because right now I'm with you, he answered. She looked up at him and realized that the only reason he was there was because he wouldn't leave her. He was doing this for her. She wrapped her arms around him and pressed her cheek against his chest. He embraced her, holding tight. Then she looked up at him, and they kissed. 3 weeks later, Mufumbi and Kayla walked into the town of Keene Valley, New York. Both had lost over 10 pounds. The walking had made them muscular. Their hair was knotted and wild. Their gaunt faces and wiry, strong-looking bodies made people stare at them as they went down the road. Kayla thought they must have looked like savages from some exotic and hard place, and that was what she felt she turned into. They came to a hillside nearly covered in juniper bushes and sat down, leaning against the flat side of a boulder. The juniper smelled so wonderful, although the plant's rough foliage caught her pants, snagging them. Kayla looked off at the towering peaks of the mountain range. It was vast and magical here. In another couple of weeks, I would have been graduating, Mufumbi said, a bit sadly looking up the mountains. That's right, she said without looking at him. She was weary, and the blue-tinted mountaintops were soothing to gaze on. Then I would have been off to Yale. Someone at Yale saw me on the virtual Jeopardy show and offered me a scholarship on the spot, he sighed. They don't give scholarships to guys without barcodes. No wonder your dad was so determined for you to get tattooed, she commented. I know. I can't really blame him, but I'll be 18 next week, no longer a minor, and my parents can't force me to do anything against my will. He was silent for a while, and Kayla let her mind go blank except for taking in the scenery in front of her. I love you, Kayla, he said abruptly. I've loved you since the first day we met on the stairs, but I could never tell you. You were so crazy about Zeke and all. I loved you back then, but that was nothing compared to the way that I feel about you now. Kayla listened, growing happier with every word. They were so close now. They'd known each other since they'd kissed at the truck stop that day that she loved him, was in love with him, and loved him deeply as a person. Both. She knew he felt the same. Why else would he have gone through all of this with her? But hearing the words made it so real, so out in the open, and then she heard snoring. Whirling around, she saw that he was asleep against the rock. How long had he been like that? He was asleep, but his words were still in her head, as clearly as if he was saying them in front of her. But was love enough? Wasn't she only getting him into more trouble? If that was true, she should leave him right now, while he slept and couldn't stop her. Then he could go to Washington, and he wouldn't be stuck with her. Getting up, she walked down the hillside, but stopped. Ezekiel stood there, right in front of her. He stared at her, but didn't seem to see her. Was he real or a vision? Kayla ran back to Mufumbi and shook him. What? He stammered as he came awake. Ezekiel's down the hill, over there. I saw him. He stood up and peered into the distance. No one's there. He is. I saw him. You must have been dreaming. A sad, disappointed expression overtook his face. Dreaming about Zeke? I wasn't. I don't care about anymore. You're the only one I love. But he was there. She looked down the hill and saw no one. If Ezekiel had been there, he was no longer present. Mufumbi wrapped his arms around her. You love me? Yes, I do. I love you completely. Then there is no Zeke, no Barcode tattoo, no tattoo Jen. There's only us, he said.